Welcome to the Coaches Collective today. I got Justin Schwend. I'm the Human Performance Advisor at the 58 Sal. I'm also a KBR contractor. Darius Decree, he is the head strength and conditioning coach at the 58 Sal. He's also a KBR contractor. Guest coach today is Eric Anthony. He is the head strength and conditioning coach at the University of Tulsa. Coach Anthony, in 2.5 minutes. There you go.
Yes, sir. So appreciate y'all having me on today. Just a little background about myself. Been here at TU going on year 3 now. Started out at Iowa State in 2009 with Coach McKnight and the head coach Paul Rhodes there. Just got in, wanting to sweep up and clean up in the weight room, just be a fly on the wall. And that's where I really kind of fell in love with this whole deal and wanted to make this a lifestyle and a profession. From there, Coach McKnight took care of our family a lot, more than he ever should have, and, helped me get through grad school there and then promoted me to a full-time position there, stayed on there. And after that, had the opportunity to go to University of Missouri with Rourke Cutchlow and Barry Odom, 2 great guys there. We had a great staff there, learned a lot, definitely a different style from what I had experienced before, and that was a huge learning experience for me. From there, went back to Coach McKnight at the University of Texas that following season, and worked in a sports science role there, a lot of rehab, another great, really valuable learning experience for me and helped me expand my knowledge base, which I definitely needed. And then from Texas, I had the opportunity to come to Tulsa in 2018 and ran with that, and that's where I'm at now.
Yes, sir. Coach, wanted to ask, this is a multi-tier kind of question. What is your motivation? And not just your motivation in terms of just getting up every day, but in terms of, what we do and what you do as a strength and conditioning coach. What is your motivation for dealing with the athletes, the population that you work with? And as well, your motivation in terms of where you're looking forward to going to, in the future, and overarching your motivation for your own staff, to keep them going as well.
Right. I would start out, this is a great question. And we pose this question on a weekly basis in our football program, whether it's from myself, my staff, the head football coach, position coach, at the end of workouts and things like that. We refer to it as a why, right? So what is your why? Is it something temporary, something extraordinary? Is it a prior experience, things like that? So for me, I would say a daily, kind of weekly, and all those types of things, motivation. I think about my father and his work ethic. All right. My parents split when I was real young. So I didn't get to see him very much, but when I did see him, typically we would go to work. He was a carpenter by trade, and that was what I knew about him. It was, I may not be able to get to see my sons, but I'm going to work to give them opportunities in the future. So that's one thing, not only in my family I strive to do, but obviously in the workplace. And I think that, next, kind of feeding into staff and athletes, kind of as a collective, how do we motivate them? I think for staff is show them, right? So anybody can talk and use words, but I got this from Rourke Cutchlow. I see a lot better than I hear. So on a daily basis, how consistent can you be? You don't necessarily need to talk it, just walk it and do it all the time and be that guy all the time, every day. And everyone around you is going to see that. All right. Now, I'm not saying I'm a great motivator by any means, but for myself, that's just the way I like handling it. If something needs to be clean, then we're going to be out there as a whole staff. I'm not going to be sitting behind my desk. Or I'm not going to jump out to a meeting. We're going to organize cleaning times based around my meetings so we can do it as a whole staff. And I think things like that, go a long way for the staff as far as that stuff goes. For motivating the kids, I would say it's simple. Be consistent. Be the same way every day. I tell them and tell our recruits on these virtual recruiting tours, we strive to be like that barbell. It's going to weigh the same weight every day, no matter what kind of day you're having. The bar doesn't care how many hours you slept. It doesn't care if you're sick. It doesn't care that your girlfriend broke up with you. It doesn't care you just took a D on that last final. the bar is going to be the same. So I think for us, as strength coaches, obviously we spend a lot of time in that weight room and strive to be like it. So that's kind of how we look at motivation personally, and then here at TU on our staff with our athletes.
Quick question for you, kind of to piggyback off that. How do you establish your culture? And when I say that, does it change year to year? Has it changed from being assistant to a head, from being the director of applied science or sports science? Has that changed? And kind of what's your big picture items, and what are some small things you did in every one of your different roles that you've held differently that to establish that culture?
Sure. So I would say first off, the culture's got to come from one person, and that's the head coach of that program, right? So, one thing I've definitely gotten to learn over the years is if the head coach and the head strength coach are on two different pages about what's important, then your long-term success is not probably going to be very great, no matter what kind of athlete you have in that building or on that team. So, here that's huge for us. Coach Monty and I talk multiple times a day right now. Every day in the off season or in season, I'm typically in his office 2 or 3 times a day, just checking in. Maybe that's BSing, but a lot of the time we're handling stuff that directly affects the program. Not all those things are happening in our building either. That's a good time to catch up. I need to know when a kid's parent just got diagnosed with cancer. I'm not going to say I'm going to coach that kid totally different, but it is something I need to know. When things might pop up in a workout and things of that nature, and I need to be able to express that to the staff on those types of things. So I think, as far as that kind of stuff on culture, that I would say that's the biggest thing is there has to be 100% alignment with everybody on the staff and what's going on. The next thing is we make a big effort with our verbiage and how we coach. So the kids are, when we're coaching a change direction day, they're getting similar terminology to what their position coach is going to coach them with out on the field. So that's why we're around listening to those types of things. When we got here, told the kids 2 things. I didn't talk very long in the first team meeting that we had the night before off season started, but the first thing was don't respect me because I've done nothing to earn your respect. Sure, Coach EA, Coach Anthony, whatever it is, whatever you want to call me, I really don't care, but I haven't earned that title yet. You haven't seen me do any of those things. But understand, I don't respect you right now either. We're not going to be disrespectful to each other, but we need to work and earn that trust, respect, and love from each other before it's just given, if that makes sense. And I think in that first team meeting, a lot of the kids kind of opened their eyes, because they knew that they were going to go through a big change with a strength coach, not a head coach. I kind of came in halfway through his tenure here, and I think that was huge for our guys on the football team to hear that. And then the other thing I said was, talking about details. There are no small things. All right. So whether that's showing up 10 seconds before a workout or a weigh-in or sprinting into a team meeting last minute, those are big things. And those can't just be big things to the coaching staff, the strength staff. Those have to be big things to the seniors, the team captains, and all of us have to get newcomers on board with those big things when they come into our program, because ultimately those guys 2, 3, 4 years down the line are going to be sitting in that front row, and that's going to be their job to take care of that kind of stuff. As far as the different roles and everything that's gone on to, I would say, assist in the development and really the implementation of the culture, I think a lot about the sports science side of things, right? So we got exposed to sports science a little bit differently than a lot of people. We use that as a tool, obviously, to keep an eye on our guys in season, whether it was through GPS and some of the other metrics that we would use through Dari at Texas, NordBoard, things like that. But we used it to train kids harder and see how hard we could push the guys on a daily basis. Good example. I mean, everybody's had that wide receiver that can run 22, 23 mile an hour. But in training, it's awfully interesting to see if they're going to take a day off or not. And really, when you can get out there and watch those things live on some of the Catapult, software that they have and call that rep out, really, 18 miles an hour, that's all you got right now on an Excel day one out the gate after having the entire weekend off, that ain't going to cut it. So using tools and things like that on both sides of the fence, obviously a performance and safety measure, but also, performance, how hard can we get them to go? How truly hard can these kids understand they can push even more and things like that, if that makes sense. So.
Coach, with this whole COVID situation that's going on, what's been some ways that you and your staff have been able to maintain the culture that you've created, as well as trying to ensure that, your kids, your athletes are, of course, doing the best that they can with what they have?
Right. So I think, one thing we implemented right away was just contact, understand this hit to you on a Tuesday morning at about 10 in the morning. We had heard that there was a rumor of someone on campus with it. We were going into, I believe, our 4th or 5th spring ball practice that afternoon. Immediately shut down the weight room, the training room. 48 hours later, all of our student athletes and all of our general student population was moved off of campus, and they went on to spring break. And at that point in time, really had no idea when we were coming back, how long this would last, what it would look like long term. But what we did is we always send our guys with spring break workouts, so all that stuff was pretty normal. And then kind of after that week that we gave them a little bit to decompress after a long, hard off season and a week and a half of spring ball, jumped back in that next Monday and started calling kids and set the tone early. You are going to talk to us a lot, over these next few weeks, where we may not be able to do virtual training and things like that. You may not be able to get in a facility and work out, but really I think communication's been key, whether that's from myself or any of the other guys on staff, our director of sports nutrition, Miss Julia, the head coach, or any position coach, between that large group of people, our guys were typically being hit 2 to 3 times a day from any facet of the program. So I think that was huge, and they figured out very quickly. We were getting on full staff meetings a lot during that time, and we were sharing the feedback we were getting. If you told me you had ran that morning and you told somebody else that I just woke up at 11 a.m., obviously there's an issue there, right? So, I think that's been huge. And then also, like we talked earlier, with those older guys in that first team meeting, those were the younger guys a couple years ago, and now they've understood the culture and the growth of it and the progression of it and where they fall. So in every offseason, we split our team up, 110 guys into 10 different teams, and they have to pick guys from different position groups, different areas of the country. We throw everything into it: grades, attendance, class checks, meal checks, body weight goals, performance goals. And then obviously we do a lot of team competition stuff too, out on the field and in the weight room. But we leaned on those guys heavily too. So there's a team captain text, an off-season captain text, and we would hit those guys on a weekly basis. How is your group doing? Because we didn't want to get into the rift of, all right, we might have our dog at wide receiver and he's doing a great job handling the wide receivers again, but now we have no cross communication on the team. So for us, that was how we did that, and had really good success with it. Really like where it's at right now, and feel like the guys do a pretty good job on all that stuff.
Real quick, EA, you talked a little bit about Catapult and how you kind of use it as accountability tools, but also as a buy-in, also as a performance-driven metrics component of making sure that you are utilizing, getting the best out of your athletes. What other technological pieces do you use in your current environment, or you've used in the past that you've seen huge feedback or huge buy-in? Like, hey, they want to see it. They want to be a part of it because it gives them more of where their potential can be.
Right. So for that, here at Tulsa, we use a GPS system called Titan, and that's been huge, kind of going back to the daily kind of check-in and buy-in with our guys. You post their peak speed every day on an office window, and you can imagine what ensues with especially the skill players in the weight room and the verbiage they start using. So I think that part of it's huge, but also with our coaches on that side of things too, is we can show, hey, week 1 off season, here's where we were at when we came back. Here's where we're at in a max out week when we really don't feel that these guys really had that in the tank. Like, we know we can press them this hard and they can keep their high speed residual at that point. And here's where we know kind of when we wanted to peak right before spring ball, and we saw some of our best speeds at that time. So maybe it's luck, maybe it's programming, maybe it's the kids, maybe it's all three of those things kind of rolled in together. With that, some of the other tech that we use, I mean, obviously at TU, it's not some of the big dog Power 5 schools, so our budget it's different, right? But we've got to be creative within that. So we've got a great staff of really intelligent people, Jevin Bowman, Chris Cervantes, Dan Hipsch, Sam Ehrlich, Lauren Bethley, and then our sports nutrition staff as well. And they all do a great job of just investigating tech. I mean, I can't tell you how much money Chris Cervantes spends out of his own pocket to try and find new tools and things that we can use. But we love the Tendo units for what they are. Played around with GymAware quite a bit. We had Perch in for a demo, getting ready for our weight room renovation. Really enjoyed their stuff. And I think a lot of it comes back to kids are competitive, right? They want the best number. So if you tell them here's something to hit 9 times out of 10, the guys you want to rely on game day, in my opinion, are the guys that aren't just going to settle for that number. They want to beat you as a coach and what you're telling them to do, but then they want to be the best at the rack too, on that side of things. You know, other tech that we've been exposed to in the past, Omega Wave at Missouri and a little bit at Texas, had some decent buy-in. I think a lot of Omega Wave stuff, especially at Mizzou, was more driven for our quarterbacks. And a lot of it was just sleep patterning is what we found to be a high correlation for them and how they were taking care of their body on that side of things. You know, obviously Texas had a lot of tools. Dari was a big piece for us, kind of finding, you know, coaching eye, does it match up to some of the information or the data that a very, very high-end modality is telling us. And then how can we make programming changes off of that? So what's kind of the next level decision? Where does some of that information go to, whether it's performance staff, nutrition staff, sports medical staff? Do we need to intervene with a little bit more manual therapy out of the training room? Are there things we can look at in the weight room? And then really we use the Dari a lot heavily in return to play. You know, where was a kid pre-injury? Where are we 3 months out post-ACL? Where are we when this kid's, you know, the sports med staff feels that they're ready for a full clearance, you know, just checking those screens and seeing if all that information lines up with coaching eye and some of the other eyes that we had on our student athletes.
Now, speaking about technology, there's so much information that's at our fingertips now. And so many kids, you know, you can go on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok now, and, you know, you have all these different gurus and information that's out there. What are some of the ways that you've been able to reach your athletes to create that buy-in, especially into your programming, and to be able to shift through what's a gimmick and what's legitimate and what's really going to help them?
Right. So, you know, for us, I think kind of going back to really just consistency on that side of things, you know, talk a lot about buy-in and where does that come from? In my opinion, you know, you're not going to get buy-in from dogging the last staff that was there or anything like that. To me, you're going to get buy-in just from doing what you do and doing it well. And I think long-term, you know, those kids, if you run the program well and run it right, which I think majority of the strength coaches in the country do, you're going to get results, especially results that the kids want and the head football coach wants, right? So whether that's performance driven, surely based off of numbers, did our verticals go up? Do we have more guys squat 500? Do we have more guys clean 300? Did our body weights end up at the end of the year the way that they need to? All those types of things. But I think that buy-in from consistency on the day-to-day, kids know what they're going to get when they cross the threshold into the weight room or when they cross the boundary into the field. They know it's there. We're all there to escape. We tell our guys all the time, mom and dad, no offense, on your recruiting trip, you will never step foot in this weight room again. This is the last time you're allowed in here. Your girlfriend can't come in here. Academics, which is extremely tough at Tulsa, you don't bring academics into the weight room. So that's, kind of turning the kids' mindset into some kids, especially that haven't trained, haven't lifted very hard before, haven't been coached very hard before, maybe. Having them use that place as an escape that no one else can touch them in there. I mean, that's their time to really get away from the outside world. And I think a combination of all those things helps create that buy-in on a daily basis.
Real quick, Coach, for you, I wanted to ask, you coached now for over 10 years, and in that you made mistakes early, as a lot of young coaches do. You also did some really good things that kind of establish who you are. If you could rewind it all the way back, is there anything you would change or do differently that you think potentially could have made you a better coach in many ways, or maybe understand players or even other coaches? What would you have done differently to maybe hone that craft of yours? Right.
So, for me, I don't know that I would have done too much different, to be honest. Like I've said, I've been very lucky to have some really great mentors along the way in this thing. I think as a young 2009, Yancey handed me, a group of guys and said, here you go coach them. You got 12 guys on one rack, figure it out, kind of the first test, sink or swim right there. And I think that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, is figuring out how to manage, and as that progressed over time, how do you manage kids? And I'd always heard, the best coaches are the ones that can go teach a soccer practice with a bunch of 5 and 7 year olds. How do you manage chaos, right? So seeing that whole progression, I think, the other part that comes into that is how is coaching style changed, right? So when I was younger, and even now to this day, when we get vacation, I've got a family, I've got a wife and 2 kids. She understood what she signed up for when she said yes. So we'll take a family vacation, but that vacation might look like 3 days, and the other 2 days we're going to go learn and see what someone else does. And that's how we pick where to go on vacation right now. So I think really that was one thing Yancey instilled in me early. He helped me out a lot financially, just to be able to go meet people when I had no money. When I was an intern in a GA, I think that was huge for my development, and obviously to make connections with people. But also really just to learn and be exposed to different styles of coaching and different ways of doing things. So from that standpoint, to be honest, I wouldn't change a whole lot. A lot of the things I think that you learn as a young coach, which I still am a young coach. All right. Very fortunate to be in the situation I am, but I think is really just learning from experience. A lot of one-on-one meetings with the head strength coach that weren't always so positive, but right now I can't imagine where I would be without those meetings, because those are what really helped develop me as a younger guy, how to handle my business and things of that nature.
Coach, looking at upcoming strength and conditioning coaches that are coming up into the field, what is some advice that you can offer them, just pure reality, nuts and bolts, as to how they can not just improve themselves and not just looking at the logos as many people do, but how to overall help us improve our industry?
Sure. So, first thing I would say is I think a lot of young guys, you alluded to it, the logo is really important. I guess I don't really understand that. Is if the logo is why you do it, then go sell tickets. You know what I mean? So at least how I look at it, right? So that might be a little bit negative, and sorry if there's a bad connotation there, but I think for me, you go somewhere and you love to do this because you love to see people grow, obviously perform, stay healthy, stay well, but really understand that those relationships I mean, both my kids are named after former players of ours. So what do those things look like long term, and really evaluate why you want to do this thing before you get into it. And when you're young, that's really hard. So, kind of next thing is get ready to work for free for a really long time. I was very fortunate. I was not necessarily in that boat, but I had a lot of great people take care of me. A lot of people pay my bills along the way to help me out to get to where I'm at right now, and I'll forever be indebted to them on that. But understand that, again, kind of going back to my experience with motivation, you can control how hard you work, your attitude when you work, and your effort when you work. And that's really all you're ever going to control in your life. So understand what can you make the most out of those things and roll with it. As far as, how to develop, I had an email the other day. A guy just finished up his school and was asking if I had a full-time position available on my staff. And, obviously I called him and said, hey, like, you're going to have to go get experience and really figure out. And I think that was a gut check for that young man I talked to. He really didn't understand a lot of those things. So I think, people coming up really need to do a great job of what you learn in school is going to be valuable information. But I think what you learn out in the field is 10 times more valuable. Right. And I think a lot of that comes down to who you learn it from and how real they're willing to be with you through that learning process is a big value within that itself.
Really want to ask you this, Coach. This is kind of, you are who you are. Obviously, you've had great mentors in your life. What are some skills outside of strength and conditioning that you've learned in the real world or in other trades that have made you who you are? Maybe even a story or two that represent to why you do things the way you do.
Sure. Great question. I take a lot of pride in the way that we work and our staff does things at TU. But I take a lot of pride in our ability to step away from that too. Right. So, Jevin, one of the guys on staff, he's got 2 children just like I do. And I think our guys see when our kids are around that they get coached the same way that we raise our children. My verbiage with my kids is the same exact way I talk to our guys in the weight room. All right. So I think from, parenting, a lot of that stuff has helped me really grow over the last 4 years with my son. And some of the things to kind of grind through that as a parent, you don't really see them as a grind anymore. But I think another experience, a really recent one, I was lucky to go on a hunting trip out to Wyoming and talk to our guys about a lot. You don't know how hard you can push your body. We really don't know the human limit to an extent yet, right? If we did, why are there still the Olympics? Why do we still have guys and women breaking world records every 4 years, right? So how hard can you really push your body mentally and physically? And I had a pretty good reality check with that a few weeks ago on a hunting trip out west. Food's getting a little low, hadn't had much water that day, and sitting at 9,800 feet and go up a trail, and the trail's littered with mountain lion tracks, and the human element, fear kind of kicks in and instinct just takes over. And I think the skills that hunting has taught me really when it comes down to discipline, right? I can go shoot my bow in my backyard 10,000 times all year long. But when it comes time to go out there and execute it in the elements and things like that, and you can do everything right leading up to that point, whether it's practice, it's your preparation, and you may never have the opportunity to harvest that animal or take that animal. To me, that's a lot like athletics, right? You can do everything right all off season, train for a starting job, be ready to go take that job, and your 4th practice in, a pandemic hits. You know what I mean? It's gone, right? So you're never going to get that time back. But again, it's out of your control. So I think things like that have really benefited me, teaching patience with hunting and with my son, I think is a big thing that's really come on these last 4 years for me.
Coach, I like to piggyback off of that. Everybody has their own definition of what mental toughness is. And then, and I want to bring that towards what it is that we do as strength coaches, because we do spend a lot of time with our athletes, especially in the collegiate arena. And, you have so many people who don't understand, I guess, the life lessons that are able to come out that weight room or on the field. What is your definition of mental toughness, and what are some other means in which you employ that with your athletes, not just in their sport, but also preparing them for life? Because that's something that we do too. I think a lot of people don't understand.
Right. So, I think toughness in general is established pretty early in your, I don't know, a lot of those thresholds are set pretty early for young kids. So, physically, I think you kind of are what you are as far as toughness goes, but mentally, I think everybody can keep growing. Really, for me, mental toughness is to be able to stay resilient through any situation, and to be able to stay consistent through that same situation. So if you can do those two things and be pretty even keeled, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's losing a parent, whether it's something positive, hitting the lotto, and not changing too much. Can you be that same guy every day, kind of throughout your whole life? And I think those are the mentally tough people, because those people also have self-awareness to know who they are, what they are, and how to be on a daily basis. They probably don't even think about how to be honest. And they're just good with who they are, because I do think, one thing that way over and over and over, that's just who I am. Not talking personally, but just really generally. And those creatures of habit, I think those guys are the most mentally tough people. I think a lot about the sport itself of wrestling. You're going to go into a dungeon of a gym every single day, kind of stealing something from the talent code here, but kind of the best of the best. They train in some of the worst conditions you can imagine, as far as that things. And I think those people that can go through what some kids would call grinding, right, or going above and beyond, that's just normal. You know what I mean? And they don't know any better. So I think a lot of that goes into your mental toughness and your resiliency as well.
All right, EA. We're at the last part of this interview, and we've already shooting up today. I really want to hear you, and anything you kind of feel like. I know you've come today, probably some things you wanted to share, and this is kind of the time where you get to do that. This guy calls the knowledge nugget section of the interview, and really, it's this is your platform from here on out. And if it's questions for us or stories you want to share, or any other essential pieces of information that you think you really want to put out there for people to really take in, this is you, man.
Okay, perfect. I think just some other things to share. There's a lot of things kind of going on in the profession right now, and really, I think it's across a lot of different professions. I mean, I got two older brothers. One's a football coach. One's an orthopedic surgeon. So I think that this has been a great time for everybody really to understand, soak up your time with your family, and don't take those things for granted. If you ever have, I'm sorry for you, but time to learn not to. I think the next thing, as far as it applies to coaching, is just go out and be a servant. We are in the service industry. Okay. Now you might look at that as pure performance. Great. Maybe you're not interested in relationships with your kids, and that's fine. That's not my place to judge, but go out and serve. Student intern, you're serving might be cleaning the base of a squat rack with a toothbrush. It's not beautiful. All right. Full-time guy, head strength coach, you're serving might be taking out the trash, but it needs to get done. All right. And don't do it so people see you do it, if that makes sense. But that's just my 2 cents on that side of things. I think that a lot of things can still be learned, and go back to experiences are crucial in that. You're not going to learn everything out of what's the greatest book right now, this, that, and the other. What's the the newest thing, RPR, square one. Those things are great, but until you get on an athlete and learn how they feel it, what's that conversation like, things like that, how to adapt, which we've all got to keep growing in, I think, how to really adapt to a kid breaking down on your couch because he just lost his father, right? So how do I relate back to that kid? How do I help this kid through this? Screw training at that point, right? Like I'm worried about a life and someone I love and care about, right? So just make sure that you're serving. And the kids see all of it, the staff sees all of it, and talk about progression of jobs and things like that. That's something I was taught very early not to worry about because it's gonna take care of itself. And if it doesn't, then you go find something else to do. And guess what? You can still work really, really hard and control your attitude and control your effort when you're doing that new job or that new trade or skill set, whatever it may be on that. I think it's important to know your family. So I've been very fortunate with my wife. She puts up with a lot. We had my son, Levi, we had him December 28th, and 6 days later I left town and didn't see them for 8 weeks. And she had the ability the mental toughness and the physical toughness to go through a very hard move. She had a great job. I had a great job, and we decided it was time for a change for our family as we started our family. So I think get ready for those challenges. And what I learned from that move alone was when you do have to move, because you're probably going to have to move at some point in your career, move your family as fast as you possibly can. I think that's one thing for me that has really helped save our family life. This last move to Tulsa a couple of years ago, it was, yeah, sure, sleep on the office floor for a couple of weeks, but then it's time to get the family up here and into a house by any means possible. So on that side of things, for me. So that's really all I've got on that stuff as far as what I wanted to share there.
No, it's beautiful. It's beautifully said and authentically said, and I appreciate that, Coach. Other than that, I appreciate you being a great resource to me over the years, and I can call a friend and knowing that I can reach out to if I ever need anything. And I appreciate giving your time, because time is precious, man. I think if there's anything I've learned in this field over the years is appreciate the time you're given, the time with your players, time with your family, time with the coaching staff. Like, it all goes by so damn fast. I mean, you have a freshman football player, next thing you know, he's graduating and he's either going to the NFL or the next step or the next phase of his life. Same with your kids, same with your wife. Like, it's all so fast. So time is precious. And I appreciate your time here, Coach. And I don't have anything else to say except for thank you. And Darius, do you have anything?
Same here, Coach. Thank you very much for your time and everything you were able to share with us today.
And I appreciate y'all very much. I'm still working through your portfolio of information you gave me 8 years ago.
And I always got more, too.
No doubt.
Later, brother.
All right, y'all.